All right, let's talk about a story that isn't just about code. It's about identity, controversy, and a really dramatic reinvention. We're diving into the story of Visual Basic, a programming language that went from being on top of the world to one of the most debated topics in software development.
You got to remember, for years, if you wanted to build an application for Windows and build it fast, classic Visual Basic was your go-to. It was so easy to get into, super powerful, and honestly, for a whole generation of us, it was our first real taste of making software. No question about it, it was the king.
So that brings us to the big question, right? If this thing was so loved, so totally dominant, why on earth would Microsoft just pull the plug and replace it with something that looked kind of the same, but spoiler alert, broke everything? That's the puzzle we're going to solve.
Okay, so to really get the controversy, we have to go back. We need to look at the original, the classic VB. This is the golden age, everything before 2002, and what made it just so special.
Okay, take a look at this. This is fascinating. And honestly, it's a little deceptive. On the left, you've got the old school Visual Basic 6. On the right, the new kid on the block, visualbasic.net. It's just a simple hello world. I mean, a few words are different. They added some parentheses. Doesn't exactly scream revolution, does it?
And that's the whole point. The syntax, the way the code looks, was kept similar on purpose. They wanted to make the change feel easier. But make no mistake, under the hood, everything, and I mean everything, had changed. This wasn't an update. It was a total teardown and rebuild. And that brand new foundation, it was called the .NET framework. This was Microsoft's huge, ambitious bet on the future of software. And for Visual Basic, well, it meant a transformation that was as dramatic as it was controversial.
So you're probably asking, what exactly is this .NET framework? Well, the best way to think about it is, it's not an update. It's a whole new engine for pretty much all of Microsoft's programming languages. At the very core of it, you have this thing called the Common Language Runtime, the CLR. It's kind of like this virtual machine that handles all the messy stuff for you, memory management, security, all that heavy lifting. But here's the catch. For classic VB to work on this new engine, you couldn't just give it a tune-up. Nope, it had to be scrapped and rebuilt from scratch.
And this right here, this shows you just how deep those changes really were. We're talking about going from being object-based, which was way simpler, to fully object-oriented, which is a whole different, more complex ballgame. The engine it ran on, totally swapped out. Get this, even something as basic as a number, an integer, literally doubled in size. That alone could silently break code that had worked for years. So the bottom line was simple and brutal. Your old VB6 apps, they just wouldn't work. You had to rewrite them. And for the huge community that loved VB, this felt like a total betrayal.
But Microsoft didn't blink. They pushed ahead. 2002, Visual Basic .NET officially launches. And just a few years later, in 2005, they were so confident they just started calling it Visual Basic again. And it kept getting better. In 2008, it got this incredible feature called Link that made working with data so much easier. Fast forward to 2019, and it's running on .NET Core, which means it's not just for Windows anymore. It had officially gone cross-platform. The evolution was real.
So, after all that drama, all that change, where is Visual Basic today? Well, let's take a look at what you can actually build with it, because the modern toolkit might just surprise you.
First up, desktop apps. And the options here are just great. You've still got WinForms, the classic, perfect for getting those business apps done fast. Then you can step it up to WPF for really slick, graphics-heavy UIs. But the real showstopper, .NET MAUI. This lets you use VB to write one app, just one, that runs natively on Windows, on a Mac, and yep, even on your iPhone and Android phone. How cool is that?
And hey, it's not just about the desktop anymore, not by a long shot. VB is a top player for building for the web. You can build powerful backends and APIs with ASP.NET. That's the stuff that powers huge websites. You can even build your front end, your user interface, with a thing called Blazor, which lets you use Visual Basic instead of JavaScript. And if you need real-time stuff, like a live chat or instant notifications, there's a library for that called SignalR. It's all there.
It even goes into some really cutting-edge areas. You've got ML.NET, which lets you build machine learning right into your apps. We're talking about things like figuring out if a review is positive or negative, or predicting prices. And of course, for dealing with data, it's got all the heavy-duty tools you'd expect, like ADO.NET for databases and the super popular JSON.NET for handling the kind of data that makes the modern internet tick.
All right, but we can't talk about modern VB without talking about the elephant in the room, its more famous sibling, C#. This causes so much confusion, so let's just clear the air right now.
So, you look at them side by side, and yeah, they just look different. VB tries to be more like plain English, with words like dim and as. C#, on the other hand, looks more like C++ or Java, with all the curly braces and semicolons. It feels like it's just about looks, right?
Well, that's because when you get right down to it, it pretty much is. Here's the big secret that a lot of people don't get about .NET. Whether you write your code in Visual Basic or C#, when you hit compile, it gets turned into the exact same stuff for the runtime to execute, the exact same. So here's the key takeaway. They're equals, period. The same people at Microsoft work on both. They run on the same engine. You can write part of your project in VB and another part in C#, and they'll talk to each other perfectly. So the choice today, it really isn't about which one is better or more powerful. It's just about which one you like the look of more. It's a style choice.
So, that brings us to today, to the future. After 2 decades of this crazy evolution, where does Visual Basic go from here? Has it finally settled down, or is it fading out?
Well, here's the official word from Microsoft. Back in early 2023, they put out a statement calling Visual Basic a stable language. What that means is they're promising to keep it running, to keep it supported on .NET. So all that critical VB code that's out there running businesses, it's going to stay safe and functional.
But stable is a very, very carefully chosen word. You have to read between the lines. It also means that the language itself isn't really evolving anymore. Since 2019, VB hasn't gotten any shiny new features or syntax updates. Meanwhile, its sibling, C#, it's getting new stuff all the time.
And that leaves us with the big final question. Is being stable a good thing? Is it a sign that the language is mature, complete, that it's done its job? Or, in a world of tech that moves at lightning speed, is standing still basically the same thing as falling behind? I'd love to know what you think.